Hey, it's Tonya, and today we're talking about the Bible book of James. We're getting into this Bible deep dive series, and I'm going to send you to the little intro so you know what's going on. Hey, it's Tonya, and I've decided to do something a little bit different on my channel, and it's a little series I like to call a Bible deep dive, because I have been diving into books of the Bible to see, are the stories true that I've heard growing up my whole life? Because I haven't read them for myself, so how would I know? And I want to see what is the history that was happening at the time of this book of the Bible that might affect the story itself, and does it say what I've been told my whole life? I want to know, what is my interpretation of this Bible story, and is it the same as the pastors or the youth group leaders or whatever I've had growing up? And as a reminder, this is my interpretation of the Bible, not the Lord's interpretation, and those can be very different things. And I'm not a paid theologian. I don't get paid to research the Bible all the time and come up with theories. This is just something I'm doing in my free time. So let's get into it. Welcome back. We're back. Anyway, so we are talking about the book of James, and today I'm kind of going to do it a little bit different than I've done some of the videos. I am just going to go through and explain it kind of like a story, because it's a letter written by James, which, by the way, they don't know exactly which James it is, but it's kind of assumed it's Jesus's half-brother. But again, that's kind of not exactly 100% to my knowledge who it is. I'm not exactly sure is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so it's written about 40 to 45 AD, so after the death of Christ. And again, it's a letter written to the Christians that have been dispersed between all of the world. So again, there's the 12 tribes, and they've been dispersed at this time. It's a letter written to the Christians for encouragement, and it's talking about seek wisdom, love all people, have genuine faith, watch how you speak to people, don't judge people. And it's trying to teach them how to also not wander away, or help people to not wander away from the Christian life and from the Lord. As most letters start out, it starts out with a greeting. The first section is talking about testing your faith. And it's talking about, hey, there's going to be all these life things that come in, and they're going to test you. And so be patient through all these trials, and try to, ask for wisdom from the Lord as you're going through these trials. The next section is talking about being doers of the word. And this kind of sounds really wacky, and I've always struggled. I didn't know what that meant. And it's talking about, hey, real faith, you'll receive the word of God, but are you going to do it? And so this is saying, hey, even you're hearing this, but put it in motion. It's not saying you have to do works to be a Christian. It's just saying, hey, you need to kind of absorb what you're learning and try to put it into practice. It's also going through and saying, hey, be in the world, but don't be of the world. So don't let the worldly people, or let the world distract you, or put you off course of what your goal is. And so don't let it change you for the worse, basically. The next section is talking about partiality. And so I want to start it off by saying, in this time, again, a little history. I love the history. It's talking about how the assembly of the people would be. And so when it says assembly, I kind of wondered what that meant. Is it a church? What is it? And so at this time, it would be a church or a synagogue. And it would be like a sacred meeting place. In this time period, there weren't really churches established. They would just meet in a wealthy person's home, and that's where their assembly would be. So it kind of dips into, hey, there's going to be wealthy people in your church, but don't become partial. Don't see these wealthy people and start having favoritism towards them. And interesting fact, they were talking about rich people, and I found out at the time, rich people would wear rings. And at that time, it was a big sign that you're wealthy. So even in that day, you could rent rings. So instead of a tux shop, they could go out and rent rings from these vendors or whoever, and that was their sign of wealth at the time. So I thought that was kind of cool. I didn't know that was a big thing back then. He's also reminding them that, hey, poverty is actually something that can lead you to trust the Lord more. So don't get that partiality that these rich people are better than everybody else, because really, I can use those people that are in poverty. The next section is talking about faith without works is dead. And so it's saying, hey, basically the Lord is going to give you this faith. And you're wanting to do what the Lord has in place for you. And so this is something that I think people have differing opinions on. I don't think you have to do good works to go to heaven, but I think your faith will make you want to do good works. And so this section is just reminding you, hey, do good things as well, but your faith needs to work out alongside of works as well. The next section is one that I personally have trouble with, and it's talking about taming the tongue, being careful how you speak. And it's saying that your words can really affect other people and it can really hurt people. But the more control you have over your tongue, the more you have control over your whole body. And so I thought it was kind of a nice reminder, at least for me, because I have trouble stopping myself from saying things, at least that maybe could be hurtful towards others, and being a little too blunt. But even if you're blunt, it can also be used for good. So it's going through and also saying your tongue can be used for bad, but it can also be used for like such great good, and you can use it for amazing things. And it's just, you want to use that in wise ways, which brings us to the next section, which is talking about wisdom is above. Ask for wisdom. But even if you're asking for wisdom and you're receiving it, don't forget that we don't need to flaunt our wisdom. We need to still have some humility in the process. Again, I struggle with that. I'm kidding. Well, maybe I do. I don't know. I definitely have trouble with a lot of things. So we'll add that to the list. The next section is talking about a warning against worldliness, like the world around you and the dangers, I guess, of that. And so it's, to me, what I took away from that section was sometimes God will take something away from you because he knows it will harm you. And sometimes he's taking away just because he knows that it's not good for you. Sometimes he won't give it back, and you just have to accept that, even though it stinks sometimes. In this section, it also talked about draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. And I really find that encouraging, because I feel like some relationships you have, it's really hard work. And I feel like if you're putting in the work, he draws nearer to you. And I thought that was really cool, because who doesn't want a relationship where they want to be a part of it as well? The next two sections kind of go together in my mind. It's talking about boasting about tomorrow and a warning to rich individuals. And so why they go together in my head is kind of the history of it. So in that time, there were merchants, and they would travel from city to city selling their merchandise. And so this was talking about how people would make a profit, and then they would be very prideful of the profits that they were making. We don't need to boast about the success that we possess. But it also was kind of talking about, I think it was going into that he's saying that we need to find what's good and do it. And also the warning to the rich. In that time, again, a little history, it was talking about sometimes the rich people would hire harvesters or like workers for the field. And then when it came time, they wouldn't pay them for the work, and they would just get wealthier and wealthier. And so this was saying like, hey, don't do this fraud. Don't condemn other people, and, do what's right, basically, is the main takeaway, I think. The next section is talking about patience in suffering. Again, one of these that I really struggle with. I just don't enjoy being patient. I honestly, I don't like suffering. I don't like patience. And so he even kind of talks about, again, history lesson. Harvesting is a process, and it was talking about until it receives the early and the late rains. And it's kind of giving them hope in that time, because it would rain in early October and early November. and that would soften the ground. So when the people were going through and plowing and getting everything ready, it made it prepared for that. And then there were later rains in April and May, and so it would again mature the crops. And I thought it was really cool that it's reminding us in a way, and even though that's like history, even though we're going through these hard times, he's putting it in place for maybe a reason. I don't think he inflicts pain. I think that's the devil, but I do think that he likes to test us. And it even talks about Job. That's a guy that went through a lot of hardship, and he was going through, and just God was cheering him on through it. And he was just saying, hey, this guy, even though he's going to go through all this, I believe in him, and I think that he's going to do what's right. And that's what he's doing for us in the background. He wants us to do the best that we possibly can. And I think that's pretty encouraging. The last one is talking about prayer and faith. And it's talking about like praying for people and like praying for the elders in your church, praying for sick people, which by the way, that leads me into another thing that I remembered. It was talking about sick individuals, and it was talking about anointing them with oil. I thought it was kind of interesting because that was medicine at the time. So in different regions, oil was used for different things. So for example, in Egypt, they would use it to cure the plague. In Europe, they would use it to cure like water or fluid buildup. And they would often use it for like bruises or all kinds of wounds. And so I just thought it was kind of interesting that he talks about that, is like prayer is something that's used for healing. And it's something that's used to help you keep going, even though he knows you're going through, life is hard. You know, life really will beat the crap out of you sometimes. And so this is just saying, hey, keep praying fervently. And even if we mess up, we can still be forgiven for those things. So that is my James explanation. And again, my tip of the day would be read it for yourself. Share in the comments if you find anything else that I've left out, because I've left out a lot. Again, I know that I do. I'm not a professional, but I just think it's interesting to learn, and especially the history stuff. I'm nosy and I like to learn more. So if you know more about the history, let me know. But that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day. Don't talk to strangers unless they give you candy. And I'll see you next time. Bye.